So, my name is Kylie Gomez, and I'm here with Donald Chavez. Today's date is June 22nd, 2020, and we are at Chavez Southwest Market. We are conducting this interview as part of the Antonito Youth Memory Project. So, right now we're going through a pandemic. Do you think the community would have provided the same support if this had happened as you were growing up?
I think so. I think people were very united back then. I think there was a lot going on, even though communication was probably a lot slower. But I think people would have extended a hand and helped out.
How do you think schools would have handled a situation like this?
I think schools it'd have been harder because of kids. I think, not the technology and stuff, not really knowing. I think people would have panicked a little more, and the kids, I think they would have, people would tend more to kind of isolate themselves. So I think kids would have been probably, all stay home. So it may have been better for, as far as staying home, but I think as far as school, I think it'd have been tougher.
And did you go to school here? You grew up here?
I did. I grew up and I went to about the middle of my freshman year here. Then we transferred to Centauri.
So did you have to deal with the nuns in school as well?
I did, yeah. That was way different, but I think they did really good. I think they were good for the community because they were kind of strict, and then people I think tended to stay with religion and stuff. But I know a lot of people didn't like them in a way, but I think they were good as far as teaching stuff. I think they had their method too, that a lot of people really didn't agree with.
So were you one of the ones that only spoke Spanish?
Oh yeah, yeah. And well, back then they wouldn't let you speak English, or Spanish. I'm sorry. And if you did, it was probably a tug in the ear, stuff like that, or a SWAT board or a ruler to the hands, stuff, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was pretty much the same. They nuns were good, and in a way, they there was different things that they could have done. But I think coming from a stricter thing, I think they were actually good for the community.
Do you think you would have learned English if this would have happened back then?
Oh, I'm sure you would have. Yeah, you probably would have been a little slower, but then again, that was one of the deals. I think they actually had their favorites. I think. So the slower, well, they continued slower. But yeah, eventually, I think a person would have learned English. Yeah.
What did your daily life look like back then? What would you do all day?
Well, when I was growing up, my after school, I used to stay with this lady. The tradition was if their husband or the wife died, they'd send somebody over to stay with them or help them out. And they sent my brother, but he was older and he didn't know any part of that. So he was there for like 2 days. So then they sent me. So when I'd get back from school, I would go to the house, chop wood, bring in wood, and then run back to her house, bring in wood and chop. Well, she had indoor plumbing, but wood was still a big part of it. And of course, she had a couple of cows, so it was feed the cows and stuff like that, and pretty much. And then during basketball season and stuff like that, I would have to. The bus would go by about a mile away from my house, and they would drop me off. So I would have to run home, and it was kind of scary over a bridge at the river because it seemed like somebody was always behind you. And, but in other times, my brother would have to take me like to football practice in the fall in his motorcycle and stuff like that.
What do you think your daily life would have looked like back then if this pandemic happened?
People were kind of more isolated back then, so it was not we didn't really come into town a lot. We lived 4 miles east of here, so we really didn't come into town. Only, when somebody came to shop or laundry or something like that. So I think it may have been tougher because people would have, I think, panicked more. People wouldn't have really known what to do, what it was really all about. I think they would have, more guesswork, and so I don't know. I think it would have been a little tougher back then, as far as keeping people in masks. I think it would have been tough for people to get masks back then because I don't think they were really that readily available to the general public. I think you would have to gone to a specialty store or something like that back then.
What was a typical day like at school for you?
At school was fun because classes. First of all, they served you milk in the morning, and so after you did that, and I think the nuns were really good because they, reading. You go to one teacher to the other, and I remember going to school here. Like the art class was up on top, so when you went up to the top, it was kind of a treat because you could see other kids playing around, and you didn't feel like you were all enclosed. So I don't know. I thought going to school here was kind of nice. I really liked it. I enjoyed it.
Was it kind of the same at Centauri or no?
Not really, because Centauri was kind of more closed in. Everybody was kind of more together. Here the grade school was here. The high school was over there. So there wasn't really a lot of mingling between, because I don't know. And the school was smaller here too. But I think the classes were a lot bigger over there, because I think our classes were like around 70s. Of course, when I left Antonito in 67, they were still in the 60s. So I think our class was like 64 in our class, so it was still fairly high, right? But then, after that, it dwindled a lot. But,
do you think schools back then were better than they are now?
No, as far as learning, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think so, because there's been more technology nowadays. I think teachers have more access to different deals nowadays. Back then it was really pretty strictly to the book. Now there are videos or whatever, even your phone, and a lot more information that's available now. But I think back then it was really textbook.
What about environment-wise?
Environment. I don't know. It seemed like everybody kind of got together. There was a lot of fighting, but there was always been that, groups. And back then it was nobody stabbing each other. It was, hand to hand, fist to fist. And then after the fight, you shake hands, become best friends. And I think nowadays it's different. I think any kid getting a fight, he'd end up either getting knifed or bullied afterwards or shot or something. Back then it was, it was just, you settle it and that was it. Yeah, you became best friends most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What about like teacher to student relationships?
I think a lot of it was good, but I think the nuns actually kind of had a little bit of their favorites. I think, depending on your skill level, I think that's kind of where you fell. So I think, I think the smarter were given more attention. Actually, I kind of thought that, but, they were very attentive though, they were good. But I think it's still that little faction there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What did you do for fun?
Play marbles, ride the merry-go-round and stuff like that. When I was growing up, they couldn't get me out of the river. I mean, that was my whole deal. I enjoyed just being outdoors and stuff. But in school it was just basically people got along playing marbles, playing at the basketball hoop. Girls, groups of girls always got together and stuff. But there wasn't really a whole lot to do in the class or even outside. Just basically merry-go-rounds and swings and stuff like that. Basketball hoop. So I think the better parts were like during art when you could kind of communicate with each other and everybody it was more relaxed than being sitting there listening to the teacher because they were kind of strict. They were fairly strict.
Do you think if this would have happened back then, people would have listened and not gathered in groups like you're talking about, or?
I think so. I think they would. I think it would have taken just a little bit longer, maybe, but I think so. Yeah, because people were pretty level-headed. They understood viruses and stuff because they'd been through that kind of stuff before too. I think the young kids from now haven't really been, but there's been a lot of information. But I think they would have. Yeah, I think so. I think people were. I think they understood more about influenzas and stuff like that. Right.
How do you think they would have gotten all the information about everything that was happening? Like, say this was happening back then, how do you think people would have found out about stuff?
Probably grocery stores, laundromats, coffee shops. Well, there weren't really coffee shops, maybe barber shops, and probably just word of mouth, maybe hospitals. And, people did have phones, but not very many of them, so I think a lot of them, it would have taken a lot of time to kind of inform people that were out in the rural communities, because, people lived 5 miles apart and stuff like that. There was, some people didn't have phones, like we didn't have phones, or indoor plumbing or stuff like that.
Would people see each other every day, would you say, or you said it was pretty isolated back then?
Well, it was. People didn't really visit each other that often. It was like certain times, like Sundays, occasions, and stuff like that. But I don't think they did as often because of community, cars and stuff like that. It's quicker now. You can get to anybody's house really fast. Back then, gas was more expensive. They didn't really go anywhere unless they had to. So I think it would have been taken a little bit slower time, but I think eventually everybody would have heard about it, yeah.
Do you think people back then would have reacted how some people are reacting now, or do you think it would have been a different ball game?
I think people still would have reacted the same. Of course, back then they may have been a little more scared because, not really knowing what's going on, not really trusting a lot of times, sometimes maybe even the government, and I think, it would have been a little bit harder for them, like even masks. People, I think back then it would have been hard to get masks like nowadays, I don't think they were really that available, especially like to the general public, right, so, but I think people still kind of react about the same.
That's all the questions I have. If you have any other comments about...
No, but I really do appreciate what you guys are doing. I really think that's great. And I hope it continues. And because I remember the stories that they did here that one time. And I told this friend about it. And we shared a couple of papers that one of the other guys had. And they were really excited about it. They kind of wanted it to kind of continue. So I know you guys are doing a great deal. So thank you guys.
What is your hope with this project, I guess? Like, what do you...
Well, I just, because there's so much history in this valley and in, even Hispanic people or, any peoples here. But there's a lot of history in the valley, and I just hope a lot of people get to know that knowledge, that you guys are going through, extracting from people and trying to get. And So I think that's really good because it's history gone. If you guys don't do it, who's gonna do it? You know. So I think you guys are doing a great job. Really do.
Thank you.
You bet.
With you growing up in Antonito and seeing how it's changed, how do you see the future changing?
Well, you know, when I started my business, I was kind of optimistic a little bit. You know, we had a brand new main street and everything, but you know, it really hasn't grown that much. I thought it would kind of bring in new businesses and stuff, but I don't know, it's been kind of slow going. So I remember when Antonito was like, oh man, you couldn't walk down the street because there were so many people. There was a lot of people in town. It was really bustling, you know, a lot of activity and stuff. But I've kind of gotten down because it just seems like it's really not growing a lot. It just seems like we need some kind of industry, clean industry, you know, to where, and, you know, I think we have a lot of stuff. We have hiking, biking, snowmobiling, hunting. The forests are here, our rivers. I think we have a lot that we could it could somehow be used to you know, to make us do some kind of industry to employ people. And you know, employ a lot of people too, you know. Because there is a lot of stuff going on. There is a lot, but I think the money isn't being regenerated. You know, like people that lived here that maybe had money didn't really invest in something that would help like the youngsters growing up to where they would have some place to work at. Now that was kind of one of my deals, was hoping I could employ somebody full time or even half time, part time, but it's really kind of hard. It really is. The business has been slow, and now this deal hasn't been helping a lot, you know. So I don't know. I really think we need some kind of industry to kick things up. I really do, because things are just kind of dying out. And I kind of think, you know, people that lived here should reinvest in their community. I think that's one big deal, you know, or people making money. That's it.
You have any more questions?
No? You have any more comments or anything?
Anything else you'd like to share with us in the project?
I'm sorry?
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us in the project?
Well,
With either
it was a lot of fun growing up in town, in this little town. There was a lot going on. Kids, like nowadays, they're forced to play with video games and computers, even little kids, because they don't know how to play. They've never really experienced, you know, because things just, I think things are growing so fast. The world is just turning so quick that you can't even jump off anymore. It's, you know, it's just going so fast. Kids aren't learning what they were used to. They don't know how to play, so they're losing a lot of stuff. Even with technology, they're losing a lot of verbal communications, I think. They don't really communicate with parents or grandparents anymore. I know that I've talked to kids and, you know, they'll say yes, hello, but they don't really, I think they don't really know how to communicate. I think we're losing the art of communication anymore. So it kind of seemed like it anyhow.
And why do
but-
you think that is?
Why do I think that? Because I think the world's just going too quick, too much technology, too fast. I think it's going to be the ruin of the world. I think. Hope not, but you know what I mean. It's just going so fast. It's just even food products. Everything's changing so quickly. I think anymore is going to be modified or genetic products anymore. You know, even your food is going to be modified, and so tomato's not going to taste like a tomato. It's going to look like one, but it's not going to taste like or an apple. There's even some stuff now that just doesn't taste very good. It's just kind of bland, like even apples anymore. So I think the world's just moving too fast, too much technology. People aren't taking the time to think or smell the roses, like they say. You know what I mean?
Do you think with this pandemic afterwards, people will start to appreciate life more and start to slow down because it was kind of like we have to live in isolation?
I think it is. I think hopefully it does help that. It just kind of seemed like more families getting together. And I think people are starting to realize the value of that. So maybe people will spend more time with each other, with their kids, and realize that, schooling is actually kind of easy, even if it is over internet or whatever, you know. Right now the technologies are hard, but I mean, pretty soon it'll come to that, to where you do half of your work at home, half of it, you know, maybe in a central area or something. But yeah, stuff is changing a lot, definitely changing a lot.
Do you think with this pandemic it's going to benefit Antonito?
Well, it probably will, but probably not to a big scale. I don't really see what people could really do more other than be more safe, maybe. Follow, washing protocol a lot more, maybe. But I don't know that it's going to. Hopefully, it changes people, like I said, to where they spend more time with their families, figure ways of doing different things, of enjoying their time instead of. That's why I'm saying the world is going too fast. People aren't stopping to enjoy their time with their families and stuff like that. There is a lot, but I think it could get better. And I think this pandemic has kind of brought people a little closer, and I think it's made people really think and realize how precious stuff is and how not safe that is. I saw a poster that said, "We live in this hazardous world" or something. So that kind of makes sense, But times are changing, but too quick though, I think. Yeah. So I think maybe what you guys are doing, maybe, that kind of helped slow down things. People get more knowledge of what was going on, how things were done, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you up to, Kay?
What am I up to?
I really enjoy what you guys are doing. I really do appreciate it. So that's great.